Hey, Ty, did you know power tools, electronics, toys, and phones all use lithium ion batteries?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And everything is rechargeable these days, which I guess means everything has a lithium ion battery in it.
Or that we only recycle less than 5% of all these damn batteries?
Amazing. That's why I'm really glad this week we spoke with a revolutionary lithium ion battery recycling startup. We're literally turning battery disposal from negative to positive.
I picked that up. Green Lion could be considered the Michelangelo of lithium ion batteries, where they've spent 10 years developing this proprietary machine. It's the size of a small house that can process old batteries in one fell swoop.
Sounds amazing, Jacob. Who do we talk to from Green Lion?
Leon Farrant. He went from living off the grid with his mama to work in the oil and gas industry and finally full circular back to Green Lion.
Amazing. And I did really appreciate Leon's deep knowledge of the energy storage business from gas and oil back over to the battery world. And of course, his humility. And lastly, his passion for the circular economy. So if you want to learn how recycling batteries and the circular economy is about to save the world, you got to stay tuned.
Green Lion, they're leading the charge. So if you want to learn more, you should listen up. Pow up, Ty. Leon, thanks for coming on, man.
My pleasure. It's nice to see you both again.
Nice to see you too. I thought we'd kick this off with, I ripped this off from another podcast I heard you on, and they were like, what's a book you recommend to people? And it was a book that surprised me. I was like, why did Leon recommend that book? So I guess I want to start with like, why do you often recommend The War of Art, and how did it leave a mark on you?
Well, it's actually, yeah, The War of Art is a book that I'd read before a few of those podcasts. So it was fresh, but I think it's just such an interesting spin on sort of dissecting your own creativity and allowing, any human being in any sort of walk of life an insight to how their creativity might be sort of world changing, and that whether you're an artist and you're creating traditional art, you're painting or you're sculpting or you're creating in any format, or you're in business and you're trying to do things in a creative way and you're taking a different angle, it's important. It's important what you're doing, and you can challenge yourself to push the boundaries. I just think, and how it's just written really, really well. So I think it's cool.
Do you consider yourself to be a creative person?
It's interesting because sort of growing up, I would have said I was a creative much more. I was always, sort of vying for art scholarships and in programs. My mum's an artist. Both my parents are architects, and it's very much an arty family. But then I went into business, and so capitalism kind of kills that a little bit. But I do think that I try and be very creative with the way that I look at business models. So you can be a creator or very passionate about circular business models, and you got to be a bit creative to make sure that you can make money and you can also instill sustainability.
How come you got to be creative?
Because it's not the sort of traditional format, right? Consumption and consumerism is the way that we've been heading, the way we've been taught. You must buy a t-shirt, you must own it, and you must wear it. If you are to flip that and you to look at it a different way, you have to be creative to make it, cost effective, efficient, easy for somebody to then, maybe use a t-shirt for the period they need it for. And then, you've got to change mindsets. So you got to be creative how you approach it if you want to make money straight away.
Interesting. I'm kind of like you. I grew up in an artistic family. Both parents, my dad was a architect. Mom went to art school and was like a designer. Growing up, I was like, I'm a creative person. And then, as I've worked in the business world, maybe it's just like comparing myself to other people where I'm like, man, you just come up with ideas like just off the cuff. Constantly, I'm like, I'm having a really hard time thinking creatively on this. Like maybe something you feel like you've beat the horse dead, right? In those moments, I'm like, maybe I'm not very creative, but I think it's kind of like what you're saying of like looking at things with a different angle and then solving something, trying to solve it in a way and maybe borrowing from another industry. Like you said it in the other podcast, you had borrowed from the oil and gas industry to figure out the business model for Green Lion. And I'd argue that is creative, right?
Yeah, I mean, another one just to loop back to the first question is The War of Art is the first book I've read that acknowledges business people to be able to be creative that I've read. I've read heaps of books from about musicians and different creative genres. But yeah, I think you can be creative in the business world as well, and you should be. I think that entrepreneurs are by nature quite very creative if they're especially deep tech. They're creating something that doesn't exist. They've got that in them.
Yeah. Leon, how old were you when you started your first company?
A registered company, I think I was 18, but I think I was trying to build BMX bikes when I was much younger.
Wow.
Okay.
Nice.
Dang, building from scratch?
I used to go to the tip and find bike frames and parts and then buy the rest and put them together. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Nice.
clever.
That's
What
amazing.
the tip? What's that?
Oh, sorry, the dump. What do you call it? The
Yeah, the
the
dump in
um
America.
land the landfill.
Landfill?
Yeah, the
Yep,
landfill.
totally.
Yeah.
There's lots of
Okay.
good stuff there. Yeah. Wow. You circular economies in your just like in your entire life right there.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of good stuff there. There's lots of bad stuff there too.
Fair,
So you got to
fair,
sort through it.
fair.
But yeah,
So there was a company that you started when you were 18, 19, 20. There's one that you ended up selling, right? I guess. When did you start that company?
2010, I guess was. I mean, I didn't sell it for a lot of money, so otherwise I probably would be doing something different. But yeah, it was cool. It was an internet business and a sort of automated e-commerce site. So it kind of worked for a little bit, and I guess it washed its face. I guess is the saying, and got a little bit of cash. But I mean, it
Nice.
didn't change the world. It wasn't changing the
Fair.
world, and that's
But hey,
probably
it's an
sad
exit,
as
right? It's an exit. Yeah.
yeah. So
And how old were you? Were you 30, 25?
yeah, I was like mid late 20s, right? So turning 40 this month, which is scary. But yeah, I would have been in my 20s. Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, that's still a pretty young age to
Very.
build and then sell a company. What was it like doing it at a like a relatively young age? I mean, yeah, I'm thinking of when I was between 25 and 30. It's like most of us are just working in the corporate world, you know?
Yeah, well, I was. I mean, I was working in the corporate world while trying to create startups up until sort of 8 years ago, and I think it was an important part of my experience level to be an executive and a CEO of a corporate company because it sort of teaches you. Startup founders like to sometimes over beers kind of hang shit on corporates, but thing is, a corporate is a startup that's done really, really well and sustained it. So they've
Yeah.
learned a few things along the way, and it's important to understand governance and compliance and making sure that you run a company with safety. I always thought, just back to your question, I think I always looked at others and thought that I was just really slow and really late. There's definitely no Kylie Jenner and these people that made billions in their 20s. So I just thought that, I'm an underperformer and I'm slow and I'm not quite there and not good enough yet. Yeah, I don't think I celebrated it at all.
I was gonna say that's yeah. I think that's crazy. I mean, you're definitely successful, and even the fact that you were able to do these things, I think, is pretty admirable. But I get it. I get the pressure. I think at the end of the day, people start companies at every age. Some of them are successful, some of them are not. When you have any success, it's pretty impressive in these days and age. So, yeah, I think you should
Thank you.
celebrate.
No, it's cool.
Celebrate.
Yeah, amen. I just was working at a startup, really young, nascent. It was just like so. It was like chewing glass. Sometimes I'm like, this is so hard. I'm like new challenge like, constantly. It's like sneaks up on you, and it's like now this is going on, and like you're always dealing with like maybe some like systemic challenges that are going on, and it's like yeah, this is really tough. This is stuff that like Ty has had probably so much experience with, that like you just don't know until you know, right? Until you're
Yeah.
in it, you're just like, wow, this is really dirty. Like this is as in like this is extremely messy, and ideas don't solve it enough, right? Like just like action in the right direction, and then like taking a lot of bets, and just like some of those bets work out, and some of those bets work out really good, but a lot of those bets don't work out great too, right?
Yeah,
You feel me on that?
I agree. I feel you on that, and No, I call it, like I think I mentioned to you last time, and Tyres had more of these experiences than us, but champagne and razor blades is how I explain the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
So I think there must be enough champagne to keep us coming back, otherwise you just wouldn't, right?
It is. It is. Maybe for better or worse, but it's a little bit addicting. And yeah, you want to just keep doing it. But man, that saying is nails
Exactly,
it on the
exactly.
head. I love it.
Yeah, maybe we'll start a band. It'll be heavy metal, and like us three will be in it, and it'll be called Champagnes and Razor Blades.
Exactly.
We'll just be startup guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that.
I think it'd be good. We'd be a hit in Korea.
In Korea. Oh,
Yeah,
there
we'd
you
be a
go.
hit
I
in
like it.
Korea. Korea would love us.
Yep.
Yeah.
They like K-pop and
Yeah.
metal. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I think they'd like us. We'll just put in some lip syncing Korean stuff. They'd love
Some
it.
dance moves, some choreographed dance moves.
Yeah, yeah.
Leon, when did you first start thinking about climate change? Because I know your career took you to the energy sector, oil and gas, and then like, was it when you were working there? Like, was it small things over time? When did you first start thinking about it?
I think my mum impressed it upon me very, very early. Our house is not a farm, but it was a place in the bush in a sort of rural, semi-rural area. It was cheap, and we were there so that we could try and be more sustainable. We had our own water. We didn't take water, and we tried not to take power.
Wow.
I remember questioning my mum about why these solar panels are so important when she was just like kind of breaking her back to try and afford the first iteration of solar panels. And
Wow.
we grew things, and we had lots of animals and stuff. So I think that I understood sustainability at a very young age, thanks to my mom. I'm not sure if I understood it, but it wasn't important. It was just something that had to be done. Consumption to me is always felt like we're doing something wrong. So the overconsumption of goods and packaging is always felt a bit wrong. And then I was completely hypocritical and, sort of didn't do my mum proud by going into one of the only two big industries in the location I grew up, which was in Perth, Australia. It's like mining or oil and gas, really. And so I was in oil and gas for 17 years in those corporate roles. So it didn't sit that well. And in 2015, we had the oil crash. Price of oil, became unsustainably low. Then I used it as an opportunity to try and become a bit more sustainable with our business offering and our revenue contribution, and do more offshore wind specifically. And so we did do that fairly successfully. We replaced a big bunch of revenue with oil revenue with wind, engineering and whatnot services. But then you learn about batteries.
Yeah.
And then it throws you, and then you're like, oh man, I'm not really doing such a great job for the planet if we are supporting something that must use batteries, because batteries are not so sustainable in their present form without them being recycled and whatnot. So then I went down a rabbit hole, which we spoke about earlier. It's a pretty deep one, whereby I looked at all the renewable energy sources and found that there's only two in the world that don't require battery storage in order to level out the energy. And so, solar, wind, hydro, everything other than nuclear and thermo probably needs to go into battery. Then you're just mining the world
Wow.
and digging up resources to the end of time unless you find a way to make it circular.
Just so I understand. So and I think it helps the audience too. All energy needs to be stored somewhere. Might as well be stored in a lithium-ion battery or just a battery in general. So, and then you see huge problems with the inefficiency of batteries, not only in their storage capacity, but in just how they're recycled. Am I getting that right?
Or how
Am I
they're
missing any?
created, mined, and all
How
that.
they're created too?
Yeah, I mean, mining is obviously a highly carbon intensive process. Not saying it's not required. I think it's always going to be required, unfortunately, to some level, or at least in the foreseeable future. It's important, but the fact that if you look at lithium-ion batteries right now, less than 5% of their content is recycled material. We're simply not recycling to the levels we should do in the world. Of the recycled material, 2/3 of that still gets recycled just in China. So outside China, we're just not doing our part. And then it's sort of highlighted or by the fact that we could, let's say in the USA, the end of life batteries and the battery waste, when recycled and rejuvenated through like a process that Green Lion offers, we could contribute up to 50% of the new battery materials. So you could wipe out a whole bunch of carbon by just doing better at recycling and rejuvenating these batteries.
All right, so we're gonna dig into the batteries. I definitely want to hear about Green Lion, but you mentioned a couple times already this concept of circular economy. This is a kind of a new concept, I think, at least for our audience, in the sense that we've talked a lot about climate tech, even some new technologies, climate change, obviously, and what all the effects that it's having. But what is the circular economy? Why is this so interesting to you?
I guess the goal of it is that we eliminate or reduce waste and pollution, right? That we stop making new things and we start reusing and recycling things that we've already used and we've already manufactured. The reason why it's important is that many industries have demonstrated it's achievable. If you look at the battery industry, lead acid does it very, very well. You know, over nearly 90% of the content of lead acid batteries are old lead acid batteries, recycled material. So, like, there's a blueprint here. We can do it, and we can, and many industries can achieve it. If you look at very, very simple, fast-moving consumable goods, like we consume them, we throw them away. If you think things in your household, if you think clothing, and it's about challenging the norm. It's about innovators and entrepreneurs, but also big business, thinking about how they can change things. And of course, the government is also playing a huge part. The EU led the way with the end of life producers responsibility legislation, which has been rolled out in Singapore and different countries in the world, where it says that once you use something like a battery, or if you sell a battery and the buyer has finished with it, it's your problem still. You have to go make sure that it gets treated properly and it gets recycled and reused. So legislation, but I think mostly the way that we think about using things and living is important.
So your example of you're still responsible for it once your customer uses it, I think that's a really interesting, like, leading way to think about this. Of like, the problem hasn't gone away just because you sold a product, and it forces new thinking. So it's this kind of concept of who stays owner of this problem, if you will, this like creation, this awesome product that eventually can become a problem, but that we still need to care for, right, over time. Yeah, super interesting way of thinking. Obviously, a lot of the companies we've talked to kind of fall under this umbrella of climate tech or sustainable technology companies. Where in your mind does the circular economy or companies that work in this circular economy or circular way fit or work with climate tech? Are they separate? Are they part of one of the other? Do climate tech companies need to be paying attention to circular a little bit more? How are you thinking about this? You seem passionate about it, so I just wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah. No, I think they should be one in the same. They're symbiotic, right? If something's sustainable, it means it can keep, we can keep using it without damaging the community and the environment around it. And that's sort of the underlying premise of circularity. I think that a lot of truly sustainable companies and climate tech companies are circular. I think that that's the sort of problem that they're solving. But it's not just a climate tech problem. It's every tech problem. If you can make it more, you could have an e-commerce site, right? You could have e-commerce or marketplaces, and they could create their own circular economies. They could create a unique and innovative way of doing business whereby they try and reuse and recycle.
Fair. I like it.
So on that note, circular economy, what is the abbreviated story of how Green Line was started? I know you have a co-founder. He had been working on the technology for a bit, but maybe you could pick up the story of when you met him and how you were like, I work in oil and gas. Like, I don't know how I can help you. And then, enters Leon.
Yeah, you'll find I've got a pretty simplistic way of thinking by the end of the podcast. So it was pretty funny. We got put together by the Singapore government. SG Innovate takes. He had completed his scholarship, PhD at very prestigious university here, National University of Singapore. And I was, of course, a disgruntled corporate person. So they invite you all into these cocktail mixers, and we met. And he said, "Oh, look, for 10 years I've been working on a chemistry and an invention to recycle lithium-ion batteries." And I said, "Oh my God, I've just gone down this rabbit hole. Lithium-ion battery is so bad. You're doing such a great thing." And then we ended up just becoming friends, and we went to lunch all the time, and we and coffees and whatnot. And I said, maybe I can help you with a business model. I think this is really interesting. It's a shame I know nothing about batteries, nothing at all. And I just probably can't help you. I'm not technical enough. And, it took him a few weeks to just illustrate that actually what he was planning to do is build a chemical reactor that breaks down these batteries and remakes them, this battery material. He had to say the words implicitly, "This is exactly like what you build for oil and gas." And you're very, your background is pretty relevant. And so, I'm that simple that it needs to be spelled out. And of course, it was a stepped approach, but we very quickly, within kind of 3 months of commercializing the idea, we already sold our first plant. And so then we had to build it.
Now you got to build it.
We had to, yeah. So it was a whirlwind, and it's been probably, I guess it's 5 years now that we're working, every waking hour on this. And so it's not very long, but it seems I can't remember doing anything different.
You guys seem primed for, I can't find a better word, success in some way. Like, it shows you've been working hard on like attacking it from all the different angles. Like, I learned about you have all the patents, you license the technology, and you have like a maintenance engineer. And so like you are really trying to be like, okay, how do we make this happen and like make something that is really impossible possible, right? And so I guess on that note, why did you take a bet on this technology? I mean, it's like maybe it's easier, Ty and I are sitting here at the end of 5 years going, yeah, well, this seems like a no-brainer. I mean, like, you make the technology boom, it does this thing, and it's super valuable, lucrative, and good for the environment. Why would you not do this? So, like, rewinding back 5 years, why did you take a bet on this?
You are right, because back then recycling was not it was not a big thing. The recycling of batteries was outside of China. It was certainly not a popular topic, and people didn't want to deal with it. And there wasn't the legislation either really supporting it. It was just starting. So it was happening a lot, it was happening for a decade in China, but outside of China, it was just not. So the reason, if you meet my co-founder, Dr. Reza Katal, you'd understand. He's a super charming, super influential presence. I mean, he makes me feel super dumb, but and so first of all, for me, it's always about betting on people, and I definitely go with a bit of a gut instinct, but the rest of it was all penance, paying for my previous contributions to global warming. And it was about, I think this is required. It's not it might be nascent. It is nascent. We're certainly first movers. The technology is not used in the world, so it's going to be hard. How do we get it adopted broadly? And it may fail because it's so early, in that you need to convince the world that they need to recycle batteries before you can convince the world that they need to turn it into a higher value product, and then you need to convince them that your brand new technology that's not demonstrated is the best one. So there's a lot working against you. But I thought it was a worthy cause. Even if we fail, it's a worthy cause, because it will set the foundation for the next and the next. And we need this in order to cut down our carbon footprint, keep climate warming to 1.5 degrees. And we need to all do our part. So that's how I saw it. I thought it was a fair investment.
That's big, man. Like just the like the penitence part, you were like, I gotta make up for all this time. But the other thing I want to just hammer on, like you said, this was a brand new technology. This isn't being done anywhere else, is it? Is that still true today?
Yeah, definitely at a commercial level. It's like I mentioned, now 2 decades on. Of course, China's recycling, and they're huge, they're massive. One of my colleagues, one of the many very bright people working in Green Lion, he's been in the battery industry for much longer than most of us, over 20 years, I think it is. And how he puts it as a PhD in battery materials, he says, certainly over the history of battery recycling, there's 3 generations. Generation one is when you take the batteries, end of life, and battery waste, and you crush them up, you shred them, you separate out the metal and the plastics. And so basically you have the metal material all mixed together. So you've got precious metals and you've got non-precious iron, aluminium, but also with cobalt, lithium, nickel. It's all bunched together. And that's generation one. So you've got a thing called black mass. That's what's happening en masse. That's the majority of the businesses you hear as battery recyclers. And that's happening in Europe and America, the like, and the rest of the world outside China and Korea, typically. Generation two recycling is taking that black mass that you've already created and then separating it into metals. So then what you do is you take away all the non-precious, or you identify the iron, aluminium, and copper, and that goes on one stream, and then you create nickel sulfate, cobalt sulfate, lithium and manganese, and that comes out separately. And then you purify and you refine it. That's probably a different player, a different company. You take it to a higher purity, a battery grade purity. Then those materials, then it gets sent to someone else to turn into cathode material and anode material. So the supply chain and the logistics companies are making good money. Generation three, what we do is taking that battery waste directly to cathode material, battery grade cathode material, anode material in one process. So the way it's novel is it's far more efficient, right? So the process I explained before to get to our end product would have taken 24 to 60 hours per metric ton. And so we do all of that in 8. But anyway, I don't want to bore everybody with this, but
super interesting.
So it's faster. Yeah.
The logistics of
it's way faster.
It's faster. It's way faster. It's the value creation and the yield is so much higher, because you can imagine when you move things around, go through this solvent extraction process to identify or separate all the metals, you lose 30-50% of your precious metals. We don't lose these precious metals. We're faster. And then the end product is so much higher value. It's a specialty chemical that our profit jump up. That's how you can quadruple your revenues and jump your profit up significantly. But the big thing is that we reduce our carbon footprint over those traditional recycling methods by 78%. So, and it's 90% more efficient, of course, than mining out of the ground. I think it's even more than that. So, but our LCA says 90. It's so you're just saving a lot of impact on the environment by creating using this material, as opposed to using raw material or the Chinese processed.
It seems like a no-brainer to get a Green Lion machine. Yeah, so it's like, here I want to give you a scenario. So like, what if I wanted to start a battery recycling business? Because like, actually, as I'd been learning about it over the past week, I was like, Ty and I should do this. Like, Ty and I should do, like, we should either do this or there's carbon accounting. I'm like, we should do battery accounting, like in the whole tracking things, right? Because of that law.
That is what you should do. That's for sure.
What would it take to get going, for Ty and I to get going? And like, say we want to become profitable and lucrative, but we are starting from square one where we don't have a Green Lion machine. What would we do? What would it take? What do we need to get? And what would be the potential outcome of it?
So if we define battery recycling as creating that stuff called black mass, why we didn't go that route is that's done. I mean, they use technology that's available, so you could buy it. Let's say you and Ty created J&T Recycling Limited, right? So go buy a machine from Europe or China and install it. You're fine. The complex thing, of course, is capturing the supply chain and the end of life batteries and the battery waste. If we look at America, so what I'd say is maybe this L&T Limited needs to be in a jurisdiction whereby it's legislatively supported, in that battery recycling is important, it's mandated, or at least it's somehow important to the country, that it's easy to collect. The supply chain is complex, right? Like, you need to collect it. You need to do it in a safe way. Some countries deem it as hazardous waste. I mean, batteries with charge in them that are damaged and whatnot, they're the ones that catch fire, of course. So you need to handle that. And then you need to bring it to a location and you need to process it whilst it's being stored safely and before it causes you any problems. And so then you'd crush and shred it. So profitability is a big thing, because you can already do the sums. The money's adding up, right?
Yeah.
You've got a facility, you've got
Yeah.
logistics infrastructure, did I need to pay for batteries, or did they pay me? In some places they pay you, some places you need to pay them. It's very jurisdictionally different. But fundamentally, why we chose our business model, and maybe that's the one you should choose with L&T, is that we provide a way for those battery recyclers to make more money. And we know that the problem, when we looked at the battery recycling industry, we saw the biggest problem is that battery recyclers don't make enough money. And that is why it's not happening more. So the private sector is not rushing in at that time, because they don't make enough money. They need to get to scale to make money off this black mass, selling black mass. And right now, America and Europe, they sell almost solely to Northeast Asia. So they'll sell to China and Korea, almost 100%. Almost all comes to Asia, right? Because they're the only ones with the capability to process it. And then America, Australia, Europe, then they buy back the batteries or the battery materials. So wildly inefficient.
They're like, you did the hard work. Thanks. Now we can make these new products.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, the best thing I hear from my clients is also sometimes they say, look, this player in China says they want us to only concentrate on making black mass, and they say they'll buy it all from us. They also control the index and the commodity prices. So I'm like, of course they want you
Yeah.
to keep doing
Totally.
the heavy lifting and get paid nothing for it. So that's what happens in the industry. So you need to make sure you understand all of that. If you come in with a new business model, what we did is we said, we don't want to fight anyone for the black mass or the feedstock. We will go with the partners that already have the waste, for two reasons. One is that we don't have to have the battle, and we don't have to spend capex on building these infrastructures. And the other one is that we built a modular technology to be able to install as an inline solution to a battery manufacturer, a cathode producer, the guys that make the brain of the battery, or a battery recycler. Will install it right there where the waste happens, to stop the carbon and the cost and the inefficiency of sending it all the way to Asia in order to refine it. And then the IRA kicked in. So the Inflation Reduction, and it was a godsend, of course. And it suddenly said, look, we don't want to buy material from these less secure countries, and we need to do it ourselves. And so currently, probably not in the US, they don't mine a lot of the raw materials, and they're building capacity, of course, for the gigafactories are coming in droves, right? So that's fantastic. You've got battery waste. You don't have mines up and running yet. That'll be a 20-year process, but you do have waste. And then you do have battery manufacturers. But what's missing is the middle portion of converting that battery waste into something that can go in a battery. Right now, it's sent to Asia and then sent back. But of course, the gap that we see to be really important to sustainability in the American circular economy, for example, is we need to help to get that material converted from black mass to cathode material, battery grade and anode material. And Greenline can do that at a very low capex. The model is to keep capex low, to be on the hook for the long term over the life of the machine, and we make sure that we produce a high quality outcome.
So I just heard the IRA helped America in particular, like start to not do this shipping back and forth to Asia. So now we have obviously the incentives in place for business to do this. Do we have the factories and the remanufacturing of batteries in the States that can help us? So let's say we put a Green Lion machine in the, do you have both sides of the supply chain to manage this now?
Yeah, that's the cool thing, right? So there's very big companies coming into the States, or let's say North America,
Fair.
into North America. So you've got the big battery manufacturers, Panasonics and whatnot, building gigafactories. And so they're the cell producers. They're the guys that are going to use this material. But you've also got cathode manufacturers that we make this cathode material and they can take this and they don't have to do much to it to shape it and make sure it's ready for a cell. And so Umicore, BASF, they exist in North America and they're investing billions to scale up. So we do have everything we need in North America to close the loop and create a circular economy. It's a normal evolution, right? Government sees the problem, says, look, we need to recycle. Let's incentivize recycling. And then, downstream refining and processing is not the first thought, and it's natural. And then you see that this stuff's being sent away. And so that's not good. But we're getting there. And we'll be the first in
the supply chain. It's easier because there's already a path to Asia. So I put it on a boat, I send it to Asia, takes 3 months to get there, but I don't care because then I'm buying it back in essence, if at all, if whoever's using it, I'm buying it back from them. Is that right too?
Yes, exactly. The sector is buying it back for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're a battery manufacturer, you are buying back your own material very, very often. So let's say you're a cell manufacturer, you're any of the big guys, you're CATL, for example, and you've got battery waste of between 5 and 30% of everything you produce doesn't come out right. So it's waste.
Oh, yeah.
That waste you send away, you might get a little bit of money for it. You might even pay someone to pick it up. And then they process it, they send it back to Asia, they turn it back into cathode material, anode material, and they send it back to you. You put it straight back in your cell. You buy it.
Amazing. But in the Green Lion model, there's a processor right there. Waste goes into this house-sized remanufacturing, re-separating chemical processing plant, reprocesses it, outputs cathode right there, a usable material without having to go to 3 other places that you could cycle right back in.
That's right. So we make these the specialty chemical. It's perfectly balanced. It's to the specification of the battery maker. They tell us what they want. We make it. We bake the cake, and then they should slot it straight back in. So
okay, so let's talk a minute. I've been thinking about this the whole time. The battery industry. I mean, everything you said towards the beginning of our conversation was every type of storage methodology that we're talking about, whether it's sustainable or not going forward, almost everything needs a battery. But we already have it in our electronics. I think we were joking just before the podcast started about rechargeable, earbuds versus plug-in earbuds and why we use one or the other. Like everything these days is rechargeable, which means it has a battery in, right? So how big is this market? And more importantly, where do you see this world of batteries in 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, the world of batteries is ever evolving, and energy storage. You can read an article every day almost about the new breakthrough in batteries, and I hope it continues, and I hope it evolves. It will evolve much quicker than it has over the last 20 or 30 years. In the last 20 or 30 years, lithium-ion battery chemistries have basically gone unchanged. The base compounds and the base metals, they vary the ratios and the way that they bind them and the way they separate them and the electrolytes and of course that has shown tremendous jumps in density and energy and the amount of energy they can store. So I think it's going to keep on evolving. But what scares the hell out of me is that you see the world, if we look at all the wearables, you say earbuds and you look at the watches, but you know, everything, right? Everything has batteries. So good friends of mine, some of my best entrepreneurial mates have hydrogen businesses, and we laugh when people, someone put us on a stage the other day and said, "Is it hydrogen or battery?" And we had a laugh about that because even hydrogen needs battery storage, right? So you need in a hydrogen powered car, you
You
need a
need a
battery,
battery.
right?
Yeah.
So it's not going anywhere. It's a really, really big problem. And we need to, Green Lion can't solve it without a huge amount of other innovators in the space. And it's just so big. We need to get moving. It is nascent now, like it's growing, but
Do we have this idea of battery count? Do we know how many batteries are out in the world right now?
yeah, I think people really stumble around on that topic. I think it's a good startup. Maybe it is something you guys
Yeah.
should do.
Because this is all I keep thinking about. Yeah.
The other thing which specifically, I really want, so hopefully you guys can build this, or anyone listening, is, nano tracking of the material. What Green Lion's mission is, and our single eye focus is on creating a circular economy for batteries. And specifically what we've said from day one is where we feel achieved will be when we take a spent battery, we rejuvenate it and put it back in a brand new cell, and we take that battery goes out into the environment till end of life, and then we take that same battery back and we make it again. And when we can prove that we've done that, we feel like we deserve to pat ourselves on the back. That's our core mission. It's of course just symbolic of what we're trying to do. But in order to do that, we need to track the material, not the battery, but the actual nano form of tracking the metals or the materials. So if you can get that done, that'd be great. Thanks.
But this also ties to your original concept of ownership of those materials all the way through the life cycle. So talk to us a little bit about why in some cultures, some countries, the government has put these regulations in place where you sell a battery, you sell a thing, a widget, a product, you are responsible for the life of that product. Has that worked in those economies? Why have they done that? And what are we seeing as a result of that from your perspective?
I mean, it has worked, and it's driving sustainability. The EU is the leader with their recycled and circular reforms, right? So what they say is that your batteries must have a minimum percentage of recycled material in them. So it's scaling up in the short term to 30%, then 50, then 80%. They can see that it's achievable. They're forcing the battery manufacturers to take responsibility for this, and therefore it trickles down. Unless they are responsible, they're looking at margins. They're trying to make batteries cheaper for people. In fairness to them, they're trying to make it, be competitive and all the rest of it. There's technology like Green Lion doesn't exist. So until now, right? So they haven't been motivated to reuse material. They go the tried and tested route, and they try and innovate and reduce cost. In Europe, this is changing things. And as countries follow, what that's forced is the very, very big battery manufacturers, they're standing up now and they're starting to take responsibility for their supply chains. They're also, one OEM mentioned to me, we had a conversation many years ago, and what he said just stuck with me, because he said, "Leon, it's not about," I said, "surely you want to control your supply chain. Are you looking at Green Lion in order to make sure that you can get cheaper material?" He said, "It's not about getting cheaper material. The winner in this game in the long term, is the one that gets material. So it's not whether you get it cheaper or not, it's who gets it, period. The losers will be the one that get blocked out." And so their particular strategy is at least secure everything that we sell. At least bring it back to us.
Keep ownership of it. Interesting. So this becomes a moat for a company to basically own the life cycle of that product, and to your point, bring it back, keep it in the fold, right, as it were, and then that becomes their moat of, we have a billion batteries, or we have enough materials to always have at least a billion batteries in circulation. Interesting.
Exactly.
There's a part of me, when I think of the slippery slope of talking about circular economy, that thinks about the capitalism argument being like, what happens when everybody's recycling? What happens when everybody's reusing? Who's making money in the middle, I guess, as it were? But it sounds to me like the story you just told me, that is a little bit of a capitalist concept of like, I want to own my customer, I want to own my market share, and I want to keep a hold of it, right? That's precious real estate for me. Is this how it kind of plays into this concept of making money in a circular economy? I guess is where I'm getting to.
Yeah, I mean, what I tout all the time, right, is that you have to look at the not the situation now, but the situation in the future, and that's what you build your model for. Let's say, just as you identified, I think Duracell produces about 90 billion cells per annum. So extrapolate that over a few years, and let's say they manage to take all of that back always. So you just block your competitor from at least that material, you know. And then as different restrictions and limitations get imposed on mining, and or the material is finite, right? It's not infinite amount of cobalt in the world. When that runs out, who's making good batteries? Only the people that have that material. So that's one thing. The other thing you said about capitalism and how does it work with circularity and whatnot, what do you have to look at is we, I can only speak about our particular model, and our particular model, what we see is that in the future, people are all going to be making money, and some people are going to have more money, and some people are going to want to take that market share from the rest, right? So if you look at the battery industry right now, there's recyclers, there's cathode makers, and there's battery manufacturers. There's anode makers, and there's a lot of suppliers, but just to oversimplify it. And there's a refiner in the middle. But of course, they will become one and the same with I think they'll have to be with battery recyclers. But if I'm a battery manufacturer, I don't want to be paying all these people at one stage, right? And I want to go Tesla. I want to go the Tesla route, and I want to vertically
integrated.
That's how I think of things. And so our model is, when that happens, of course, we are the most frictionless solution for them. We have a modular machine. We install it there. It solves your problems. You don't have to send your material anywhere. You don't have to pay for another facility. You don't have to partner with someone or make a JV. You just place our tech in your site.
You're really building for the future here. You're building for this future, and not just a future that you're helping envision and create. Like it's circular in itself. Like you're helping this thing become circular, and then once it becomes circular, you're completely integrated into the circle. I love it. I love it.
Well, we hope, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Singapore's founder and leader Lee Kuan Yew, he used to say that there's always multiple futures. You must plan for multiple futures, and so
fair.
You need to look at.
Brilliant.
That's the one we chose. We hopefully have alternate futures we've thought of in case it doesn't work out the way we hope. But yeah.
But like I said, it's also one that you're helping to create if you can become. So before we leave this subject, then I got to ask, okay, how do you guys make money in the middle, and how do you stay integrated into this process?
We have multiple different models or how we make money. The most popular one, of course, at the moment, as the industry grows and it's nascent, is one that we recover some money for the build of the machine, but it's very low. So we keep the capex low for the client. Going back to that problem statement of 5-6 years ago, when we said, battery recyclers just need to make more money, and then it'll happen more often, battery recycling. So we keep capex super low, but we do earn every time we produce more value, which is every single batch, every single day that we produce a higher value outcome. We share in that profit improvement with our client, and that's the licensing model that we have. So that's over 10 to 25 years is the life of the machine. The other models are whereby if you're a very, very big player and they want to buy the machine, then we can, and we have some level of maintenance. And then the other way is that we are also making JVs where we cooperate facilities. We come with technology, and we come with performance guarantees, and someone else puts up the cash and the input, and wants to take the output. So we have multiple different, again, because each country has so many different dynamics on how they view battery recycling.
Which makes a lot of sense. You have to have multiple models. You've already gone global. You know what I mean? I think I would say in the startup world that I've come from and been in for years, it's always about how do we get to the next market? But that market is still usually in the country that we started in. And then there's this big idea of how do we go international? And that becomes a big, big exercise. You guys built an international company right from the get-go, and therefore already have a lot of these things thought through. I just have to ask, like, what challenges did that bring, like starting off as an international company?
It poses the normal challenges, right? It's like identifying the right people that understand a global business, that are not 9 to 5 people. That doesn't work. And you also have to find highly communicative people. And so we've managed to do that. And we've hired. The thing I'm most proud about is the team in Green Lion and the culture. It's somehow transplanted in some cases with people, in some cases it's just by osmosis or something. It's transplanted our culture from our Singapore operation to our Houston operation to the other states in the US, to Germany, to Seoul, and to Australia, Melbourne. And you go there and the people are just as quirky. They're laughing about just similar stupid stuff and having a good time. And they're also just working like ridiculously hard and purpose driven, as opposed to I feel like I could say we have zero mercenaries in our business. We have people that are there for something greater than just the salary or maybe the success of the company.
How would you describe the culture that is disseminated to all these locations? Maybe in just like 3 adjectives or 3 words.
So I'd say it's fun. I'd say it is purpose driven. That's 2. Let's say,
That's all right.
let's
I'll
We get
allow
it. We
it.
get it.
I'll allow that.
We'll add a
Yeah.
dash in the middle.
Yeah,
Exactly.
allow it. And then I mean, probably passionate or something, because the guys just really give a shit. It's absolutely the best culture I've been involved in, and I wasn't the driver of it. It's all the other people, because absolutely the States gets led by our director and VP out there, and so he's created that. In Australia, it's my co-founder, and in Germany, it's one of our other leaders, and so like it's just the really great people.
Sounds like there's a lot of love. I don't know. I imagine a big heart for some reason. Like a big heart in the shape of a planet, because like it's kind of fun,
Yeah.
it's passionate, and then it's also it's purpose driven. That's really cool. I guess on that note, since you've been involved in starting companies, and seems like almost your entire career, starting with the BMX company, what's a big thing you've learned that you would like to share with the next person starting a climate tech company, or maybe a deep tech company?
Well, I guess it's just deep tech and hard tech, climate tech. If you combine the 3, it's just super hard. So what I hope that they learn from me is not to listen to any of those things and get involved. Ignorance is bliss. Just don't listen to anyone and jump in, because if you win or lose, you should burn the boats. You should burn all forms of exit, and you should commit fully to it, because what you're doing is truly important. And the world needs more hard tech solutions. Software is important and it can optimize, but hardware really makes the fundamental changes and can really reduce things like carbon and climate. And we need software to work in with it. But sometimes people stay away from the hard stuff. I think you should eat your broccoli first. You're definitely equipped to do it as well. The other thing is that people say, look, I need some more experience, or I need to learn this, or I don't know this. You're equipped to do it if you're passionate to do it. Your passion will drive you far enough to attract others which are smarter than you, which is the only way that we have become successful. And if you truly believe in your cause, then you need to take the leap. You'll compensate for your, in my case, my lack of intelligence and failures. You compensate with brilliant people because they think that you're either passionate or dumb enough not to give up on this thing. So that's what I'd say.
I love it. I have to follow up on two things that you keep talking about here, which is people. I love how passionate you are about the people in your company and the people that you work with, as I totally agree. I'm a huge people person, and I've seen it in startups where like great teams can make even bad products successful a lot of times, and horrible teams can kill the best of ideas. I mean, that's it's just amazing. And so when you have that around you, and then to your point around like filling the gaps, when you surround yourself with people around you smarter than you, it's just such an empowering place to be. And I will say, I think this is a theme throughout this podcast series this last year and a half of talking to all these climate tech founders. I come from that tech startup world. Jacob and I both do. Sounds like you've touched on it as well. And there's this old adage of, software is eating the world, and it's just not true. Like, it's just not. And it's not true specifically in climate tech. Like, we need carbon sequestration, right? We need these are hardware problems. These are physical molecule problems. These are not software problems, and software can't solve it. To your point, software is a tool. It's an empowerment, but it cannot solve these big problems that we're talking about. It can't stop flooding in the Congo with software, right?
Yeah,
like, we need to start getting real. So I think that's something I have learned in this series of talking to founders and operators in this space of, you got to go in, and this is the hard thing. It's the harder thing to do, but you got to go for it. So I'm super inspired by that too. And I appreciate you bringing that up. We always ask this question because it's the forward thinking question around climate tech in general. And it can be in any realm that you're thinking about, whether it's your industry, the circular economy, or anything. But from your perspective, looking at this problem, the climate problem that we're all talking about, what in your mind is the next big step change that we need to make in sustainability, climate tech, whatever, to help move us forward as a species?
I'd say, I mean, it's a big question, right? But from a macro level, just slow down or stop the consumerism, the using and throwing out of things that we either need for a short period of time or that we don't need at all, really, to improve our life.
Yeah.
So if we can do that, and if we do need something, it's fair, use it till the end of life. And then if we can't use it or it's not fit for purpose, then see if we can find some other person or application for it. And when it really, really dies, then you recycle it and you start again. So, I mean, it's a psychological, a social change, and a business model change, a legislative rethinking. So it's pretty massive. But, of course, I keep touting this. The more circular economies we can create, we make a consequential impact on our climate emissions. I think that that's the way that I want to make a change. And the rest is by true innovation. So the other thing I'd say to anyone that's listening with cash, the bankers, find a way to see innovation as bankable, because typically this is the mismatch. If you're deep tech, it means you're doing something that the world hasn't seen before. And by its very nature, you're not bankable because they can't show security in it. So we need to change the way that we think about financing.
I couldn't agree more, man. And it just says that, like, we have to challenge our investors. We have to challenge our VCs, our angels, the people out there to take these bets. I think this is this question we asked you early on, like, why did you take this bet? Like, it was a new technology, completely nascent. Even to today, it's the only one out there doing this type of thing. And to your point, because there's no comps out there for bankers to look at, they don't understand how to make money on it. But sometimes you just got to bank on innovation. I love that. You just got to bank on the big idea. And if we really want to change the world, that's how you got to do it. So I appreciate that. All right, Jacob, I think it's time.
We're about to wrap up, but we're going to do something kind of crazy, but we call it rapid mayhem questions. But, So true or false? We're gonna ask some true or false questions. And given Leon, you know a lot about the circular economy and lithium-ion batteries. I think you're gonna do really good on this, but I'm gonna try to stump you. Is my honest goal. So are you ready?
Okay.
Okay, you ready? All right, true or false? According to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, 65% of household items are used less than one time a month. True or false?
65%. I feel like it might be true because you quoted a foundation, but it seems like a high amount. I'll go with true, but I feel like it might.
It's false. It's
Yeah,
false, but
go
you're
with
on the right
true.
track. It's higher. It's 80%.
He's tricky.
80%.
He's tricky with his
Can
wording.
you
He's
believe that?
tricky.
Let's keep going. All right. As of
Okay.
2020,
Makes sense,
it
actually.
does, right?
Yeah.
Like, how many things do you touch every day? I feel like I touch the same 20% of things. Total Pareto principle going on here. All right.
Absolutely. Yeah,
2020,
principle, yeah.
been a few years, but our world economy in 2020 was only 19% circular. Big, massive circularity gap here. True or false?
False. I
You're
would say
right.
that's
You're right.
absolutely false.
It's smaller than this. It was 9%.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have said it's about half. Yeah, I mean, even today it's probably half of that.
Okay.
I'm not sure what it is
Yeah.
today, but
I wonder how they. I'd be curious how they measure this. Yeah.
All right. Let's move over to lithium-ion. All right. Lithium-ion batteries can be charged and discharged hundreds of times before their capacity starts to degrade significantly. True or false?
I know this one.
Yeah,
that's
that's right.
definitely true. It's more than hundreds,
Okay.
thousands. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't
incredible.
realize. It's amazing.
Fun fact, just a quick fun fact is that you can recycle a battery an infinite amount of times.
Amazing. That is
Like millions of
mind-blowing.
times. Like I could do it a million
Wow.
times.
Millions, billions, billions.
That makes sense of the whole winner is those who get the materials, because then you literally
Yeah,
have a finite piece of the pie in the infinite circularity universe. And that's beautiful. All right, this one's kind of mind-blowing. As of 2021, we were using 1.6 Earths, meaning we're using about 60% more of the Earth's resources than it can regenerate every year.
Yeah, I've got to confess, this is me cheating. It's true, but it's because I've seen that
dang
before.
it. Okay, all right.
So
That's right.
yeah. So, but it's
pretty crazy.
mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing. It was crazy.
It's mind-blowing.
Pacing wise, by 2050, we could get to 3 to 4 Earths, which is pretty nuts. So, 2 to 3 times more. And then last one. So I didn't even know Tesla's use lithium-ion batteries, and they put them in the base of the car, and that's why the base is so heavy. So the Tesla Model 3 has 12,170 batteries in the base of the car. True or false?
That is true. That'd be true. And then if you look at the S and certainly the Plaids and all those performance, they've got more than double that.
You might be right. I had written false here, but it's a minimum of 2,170 batteries, but it probably goes up to
minimum. Sorry, minimum. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah, that's the minimum.
What's crazy that the Model S, the first sedan, it had 7,000 batteries in there, and this one at a minimum can have 2,000. That's crazy. It's like 3 times less. All right, we're done. You did pretty good, Leon.
Not that well.
He's tricky. You got to watch his wording. You got to watch the way he words.
I'm like Regis from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Got to watch him closely.
Exactly.
Leon, more serious question. What would you say to someone who says climate activism and capitalism, they just can't coexist? Like you can't be good for the earth and make a lot of money doing it.
I would say they have to coexist, right? So the private sector is driving this innovation. And so capitalism spurs this private innovation, of course. It has to make money, or someone needs to think they're making money on it, or us average Joes, we don't have the cash to get them off the ground. It must coexist. It's not going to be driven, it's not going to be top down. If we wait for the government to implement legislation to make this easy and give funding for the greeniums or the green premium, we're never going to move fast enough. And we're going to be at
it'd be too late.
5 planets
in
no time. So it's too late. Yeah. we need to get off our ass and stop making excuses and
Yeah, we all know the
take the
government was
plunge.
too slow on things. They're too reactionary. So we need to do something about it.
Yeah.
Capitalism has to do it. And that's our premise. So we asked the big question of like, what's the next big step change that the climate tech world needs? But right now, when you think about, the everyday person and our everyday existence, and you touched on this a bit, is my guess, but we always ask this question: climate change, it's so big, it feels a little bit overwhelming, a little bit nebulous, and people feel a little helpless in what they can do to help. But what is something you would ask people to do today that can make an impact in your mind?
Well, the biggest impact, I think, is by if you have a creative streak and you have an idea and you think it can make a change, is to get out there and do it and support those who are doing it, or go work for a startup. You're contributing if you're working for a climate tech startup, and Ty will tell you it's very fun and very rewarding. It's more champagne than razor blades, and you learn a lot. So
I love
that's
it.
what I would say. If
I love
you
it.
and don't dismiss the small things like just cutting single-use plastics out, and don't dismiss those things as being like, it never makes a difference, because if everybody dismisses it, then of course we don't make any consequential change. But I think everyone is doing their part. I'm really, really optimistic about the way the world, and especially young people, look at what needs to be done. So
Love it. Great advice. I love the idea of joining startups. I like that one. No one said that one yet, and I
join
totally agree.
startups.
Join
If you
startups.
can't join them,
Jump in.
invest
Yeah.
in them. If you can't invest in
Invest
them,
in
then
it.
join them.
Buy their products. Yeah, totally.
I'm glad you didn't
I like
say
it.
don't buy another cordless vacuum. Like, buy one with a cord or something.
Yeah, exactly. No, it is what it is.
Buy the best thing you can buy and use it till it just cannot be used anymore.
Well, Leon, this is awesome. This has been an awesome conversation. I really enjoyed chatting with you. But before we go, where can we find you out on the internet? Where do people go to find Green Lion, you, what you're doing?
Well, you can check us out on our LinkedIn. That's where we have we actually have some pretty exciting announcements coming up soon. So check out the Green Lion is, of course, greenli-ion.com, being green lithium ion. And website, it's but LinkedIn, you can find me, you can reach out, anything you need. So I really appreciate the time. You guys are amazing. I feel like we've been chatting in a bar for 10 minutes,
Right?
and it's almost
I
an
agree.
hour. Yeah.
I agree. It's been great. I love talking with you about this stuff, and I love your vision, and I love what Green Lion's doing. So
You
all the
too.
best.
Thank you so much, guys. Jacob, Ty, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks for creating something so what seemed impossible that like really I think it's gonna change the earth. So like really from my heart, thank you.
See you guys.
All right. Have a good
Ciao.
one.
Bye.